Thank you again for attending our webinar. My name is Joseline Nicholas. For those who don't know me, I am a real estate agent here in Southern Ontario. I am also an investor, and I started in real estate as an investor. I used to have a government job working for the government of Ontario. And while I held that position, I was buying properties on the side. At the time, I didn't really have a word to what we were doing. We just thought we were buying properties for our kids or properties for us when we retire. But as I got connected with other investors, I understood that you can actually do this on a professional level, and that became my goal. It became my goal to work hard, buy enough properties such that I can work in real estate full time. And that has happened for me. So now I'm working in real estate full time. My husband and I invest in Kitchener-Waterloo, Guelph, Hamilton, and Niagara. So I've gotten to know all these markets. So if anybody has any question about these markets, I'd be happy to help. And if you have questions about other markets as well, I'm sure Danielle, between me and her, we probably know a lot about the Ontario real estate market. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll get to them. So joining us tonight is an amazing woman, an amazing investor at the same time. Danielle is a very special and one thing that I really admire about her is that she loves sharing her real estate investing experience with other investors, which is what she's doing tonight. So I'm very excited for tonight, very excited for the conversations that we're about to have. Danielle, thank you very much for taking the time to be here tonight. I'm really looking forward to learning and growing together tonight.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited about actually what we're going to talk about tonight. So
me too.
So I guess, guys, we're ready to rock and roll. I am Danielle Chiasson. I will be presenting to you tonight, and I know the title of the webinar tonight is how to successfully fix and flip properties in Ontario. And yes, we're going to talk about that. But what we're going to talk about today is going to be a little bit different, because I just want to talk about the cost centers when it comes to running a flip business or residential rehab business, which is what I called it when I was flipping. And so ultimately you're rehabbing properties, you're bringing them back up to standard in that neighborhood and bringing it back to its former glory. And so what I want to talk about today is one of the biggest things that people get into trouble with when they're flipping or when they're getting into flipping is that they watch TV and everything is sexy on TV. By the way, it's not as sexy as it is on TV, number one. Number two, I want to talk about the true cost of flipping. Essentially what happens is, you know, when you're watching all of those flip shows, you got the purchase price, then you've got the, you know, the cost of renovation, and then this is the sale price, and then boom, there's your big profit number. It's not like that in real life. And so that's what we're gonna smash tonight. I'm gonna share my slides. What I wanna say is this: if you have any questions during the presentation about something that I'm covering, feel free to put it in the chat box. Joseline is going to field and moderate and monitor the chat box and the question box. And so go in there, type in your question, and then we'll hit it right away. And then that way we'll be on topic, and then I can maybe expand a little bit further on something that I'm covering. We're going to be looking at probably going to about 7:30 with the slides, and then open up to a Q&A. I really want to have some engagement with you guys. So I prefer that. If you have any questions, just go ahead and let me know, okay? All right, so Flipping for Profit series. So this is part 1 of 2. I did talk to Joseline. She kind of wanted to also just talk about the, you know, the flipping business in general and talk about an overview on that. I wanted to dial in a little bit more into the cost centers. And the reason why is because you really need to understand and go into this business with your eyes wide open if you want to do this as a business. And so otherwise you're going to lose money. So the first thing I want to do is say thank you to all of you for being here. You should give yourselves a big pat on the back. So everybody do this. Yes, do it right now. Nobody's watching. Give yourself a pat on the back because 1, you committed to being here, 2, you showed up. And this is the first step into negating any risk that you're going to take while you're flipping. And so you showed up, and guys, it is tough. There is so many great series on Netflix. I know it. There's probably some TV show right now. It's Wednesday night on cable somewhere. Your kids are pulling you in one direction. Your spouse is running you in another. And so maybe you're taking school part-time, you got homework to do, but yet you showed up. So life happens. We have to make time for this. You showed up, and I just want to acknowledge that. It's a huge commitment. So the 5 cost centers to flipping business. Now, I said cost center. Okay, this is what it's going to cost you. 1 is your acquisition. 2 is the financing. 3 is the holding cost. So the acquisition is all the costs, by the way. Let me just expand on them as I go through. The acquisition is all the costs that it takes in order to market, do your due diligence, and find the property and close on it. That's your cost of acquisition. So these are the 5 cost centers: cost of acquisition, or the cost to acquisition, cost of financing. The cost of financing is the money you're going to borrow, the cost you're going to pay for the money you're going to borrow in order to secure and buy the property. Also the cost for the down payment if you're borrowing it, and also the cost for the rehab. Your holding costs, we're going to cover all of that. That's the cost of what is going to cost you in order to hold the property, just to hold it, just to own it empty. The rehab, of course, that's what you're going to do in order to uplift the property and drive value into the property. And then the cost of disposition. So all of those are really important to know. And then I'm going to show you guys how to tie it all in at the end. Okay. So a little bit about myself. I got a couple of housekeeping things to do. This is one, a little bit about me. My name is Danielle Chiasson. I've been an investor in Ontario as a career since 2013. That's when I went from being a landlord to becoming a sophisticated investor. 2013 is when I made the commitment to doing real estate investments as a career. And I spent 2 years educating myself. In 2015, I bought my first flip. Bought and sold houses for 5 years. I flipped 18 homes. And in that time, was really getting to dial in, knowing what I was doing, but realized that that's not what I wanted to do. And so last year when COVID hit in 2020, we had a 7-week construction shutdown. So all my projects came to a halt. And it gave me time to reflect on which direction I wanted to go. Now, prior to that, I had done some duplex conversions, put them into my portfolio. So I owned 8 units last year. And then since I decided to go into acquisitions and move into the multi-unit space, I now have 53 units, over 15 properties for assets under management, almost $7 million. So I say plus 6.84 plus, that's what it's at today. But I say plus because every day that I'm sleeping, that goes up, as you guys know. So bought my first investment property in 2003. That was in Calgary, and I bought 2 houses at the same time. Both were investment homes. I lived in the main floor of one and rented out the basement of the other, and the other one was the same thing. It was a bungalow that I rented both units separately. I belong to a lot of different real estate groups. I eat, live, breathe real estate, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm always looking to expand my knowledge. So my focus is residential. Started in the single family space, now I'm in the multifamily space, smaller multis, working my way up, and my next step will be development, which is coming soon. My lawyer would kill me if I don't show you this, but basically it just says this is educational and informational only. Everybody's situation is unique and different. So use this as a base to go find out what works best for you. It's just a disclaimer, guys. Standard. Okay, so let's get at it. Your acquisition costs. So you want to go and market and actively look for leads and pay maybe Facebook ads or Google ads, anything like that's going to cost you money. People don't necessarily take those costs and account for them in their numbers, but that's still, it's a cost. That's a cost of getting that property and doing the rehab. So don't forget to include your marketing fees. When you're buying a property, you all know there are lawyer fees, there's realtor fees, there's land transfer tax. If you're in Ontario, it's Ontario land transfer tax. Some provinces don't have land transfer tax, like Alberta. So this may not be the case for you, but if you're in Toronto, you get double land transfer tax. So you have the Ontario land transfer tax as well as the Toronto land transfer tax. So just be aware of that because it's almost double. You have title insurance, which is optional, but I always get title insurance because sometimes there are surprises. You may have to pay for a survey, depending on what you're buying and why you're buying it. And you have your closing costs. in your closing costs, the lawyer is going to have some disbursements, some stuff that he's going to pay for. Title search is one of them. There may be some adjustments. If you buy a property that has an oil tank, if there's oil in the tank, there's a credit to the buyer. You have to prepay that. That gets put on the disbursements. If they prepaid the property taxes for the year and you're buying halfway through that year, you have to pay them for the remainder of the year because you have to give them that as a credit. So there are some costs in there that you may have to pay up front that you might not have thought of. The other thing too, which you're going to see in the financing slide, which is coming up, there's also the fees for your lenders. So when it comes to financing, I didn't put it in the last slide, but there could be the lawyer's fees for your lender if it's private lending. So this lawyer fee here, depending on if you're getting a conventional loan or if you're getting a private loan, this lawyer fee could be double, because typically if you get private financing, you're going to be paying for the lawyer for your private lender as well. So it can add up real quick, guys. So when you're dealing with your financing cost center, you have your rate, whatever the interest rate is that you're going to be paying. So the interest over the course of the loan, whether it's a conventional loan, whether it's a private loan, you're going to have to pay that interest. You could have a lender fee, which is typically a percentage of the total amount loaned. Sometimes lenders will tack on an administration fee. That could be flat rate. That could also be based on a percentage of the loan that you borrowed. If you get private money through a broker or conventional, there's also a broker fee that is involved in that. And here's another one. Be careful when you're doing private lending. A lot of people don't think about this. When you're doing private lending, a lot of people think they can flip in 6 months. And I just want to touch on this real quick, because flipping is close to close. It is not how long it takes you to do the renovations. It is from the time you close on the acquisition to the time you close on the disposition. And so a lot of people miscalculate how much it's going to cost to flip because they don't take into account the entire time. And so interest is accruing over that time. Holding costs are accruing over that time. The longer you hold the property, the more it's going to cost you. And you do have to factor that time in there from close to close. If you have a private mortgage, and I used to do mine for 6 months. And so the private lender, if your project is taking longer or you didn't sell within the first 6 months, which is very common, what'll happen is he may have a renewal fee on that mortgage. Again, usually a flat rate or a percentage of the amount loaned, but that's something that a lot of people oversee and they don't think about. Also, when you do a mortgage, there's a registration on title. And in order to remove that registration, the lender has to go in and get their lawyer to send into land title's office to discharge that. And there's usually a fee for that, $250 to $300 typically. It used to be $100, but now it's a lot more. So there's also that discharge fee when it comes to financing. And that is for every registered mortgage. So make sure you factor that in as well. Your holding cost is typical. It's the same as it would be on your house, as it would be on an investment property. You're going to pay for your taxes. You're going to pay for insurance, of course, all the utilities. So we're talking gas, hydro, if you have an oil tank, and I'm only talking about that because I just removed one from a property, but oil tanks, of course, if you have to pump in oil all the time, that's going to be a fee. Water, sewer, if you're on a municipal system. If contractors aren't doing the snow removal or the landscaping, then you're going to have to pay another contractor for that. And if it's an empty unit, you may want to consider having internet, Wi-Fi on there, and having some security cameras. Again, that comes at a cost. It's nominal, but when you add that to a whole bunch of other nominal costs and then you multiply it by a set time, set number of months, that cuts into your bottom line directly. So you do want to count all of that in. Now, your rehab. This is the big one, obviously. The cost of your rehab is going to have a lot to do with your scope. So what are you getting done to the property? You should know this before you go in and close. You should already have that dialed in. Your scope of work, by the way, this is not what we're talking about tonight, but my scope of work, I had a master scope of work, everything and anything that I could do to a property. And then when I walk through a property, I highlight all the things on that scope of work of what I want to do. And then I delete the rest out of my master. And then I have my scope of work. That's just a way to systematize how you're going to do it and also not miss anything that you may want to consider, because you can't possibly remember everything in one walkthrough. So that's a great way to do it so that you don't miss anything. But how much is that rehab going to cost has a lot to do with what is on your scope of work. And if you don't know what the cost is, go into the, put your offer on that property as conditional and bring in a contractor to come and see, or bring them in before you put the offer and get them to quote and say, this is what I want to do. They just, before you put it under contract, you just need a ballpark from a contractor. If you don't know the numbers yourself, get somebody who does to walk through the property with you. Really important to know what the cost of the renovation is going to be. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you factor in the HST, because a lot of people don't think about HST, but if you're doing a $50,000 renovation, that HST is going to be quite a bit of money. So you want to make sure that you factor that in. Okay, here's all of the things that could cost you money on the reno. There's many more, of course. But again, like I said, the HST is the big one. And then what you also, I didn't put it down here, but what you also want to do is have a contingency. If you've never done a flip before, whatever you think the cost of renovation is going to be, add 15%. If you're a little bit more dialed into the numbers, then you can reduce it down to 10%. Those are the numbers that I used, was always 10% as a contingency. So if I thought I had a $60,000 reno, I would round it up to 66,000 just to be safe, and then add HST. So those are all things that need to be added in. Now, on this slide, I have starred a few items, and those are your big ticket items. So when you're thinking about doing the renovations, you want to make sure that you take a good long look at what those big ticket items are. It's the foundation is one. Any structural issue, it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars, completely blow your budget, eat your profit, and then maybe put you in a negative return. So you really want to make sure that you don't go into that space. The roof, roofs now are really starting to cost a lot of money. So you could be looking north of $10,000, $15,000, depending on the pitch of the roof, how much surface there is. And again, it's really important. I've seen so many roofs now, like when they go to open it, it's just been left for so long, it's completely rotted, and you have to do the sheathing too. So roofs can really get costly. You want to pay attention to that. If you have a rural property that you're bidding on or considering buying, a well and septic system, expensive. The septic system will run you between $30,000 and $40,000. So if you have a $40,000 profit that you're calculating and you didn't do a test on the septic system, that could be your profit that's gone right there. So make sure that you have conditional. And I've done rural properties. You just put a condition in there. It's very common to put a condition before you lift the conditions and go firm that the well and the septic system is tested, because they're very expensive to fix. Windows are always a big one. They're expensive to do, completely easy to do, because you just call a window contractor, they come in and they do the work for you. It's super easy, but it's really expensive. And people don't think about this, but if you have like sliding patio doors, very expensive. It's a couple grand. A front door, you're looking at maybe, if there's side lights, depending on how you're going to dress it up. If there's an insert, a glass insert, they could run you anywhere from $800 to $1,200. They're not, on the big picture of things, it's not huge, but when you start adding these items that maybe you didn't consider, then all of a sudden it's just eating away your bottom line. So let's say you had a profit, that you thought you're going to make $30,000, and then all of a sudden there's the roof that you didn't see because it was wintertime, you didn't realize, and then by the time you're done the project, the roof shows up, and then you're like, oh my God, and you got to do that, and it's $15,000, and then there's a backslider that you got to replace, and that's $2,000. Like all of these little things seems little, but they add up, and then all of a sudden you thought you're going to make $30,000 and you're going to be lucky to make 10. So really, really important that you look at everything when you're considering flipping, considering a property to flip. Project management. So if you hire a GC, a general contractor, they do put a premium on the cost. So you do want to consider that as well. And by the way, you still have to manage the GC. A lot of people make the mistake when they hire GC, they think, okay, I'm done. I just have to pick some specs as far as the colors of the type of floors and the colors on the wall and that sort of thing. It goes a little bit further than that. And a lot of GCs will actually have a lot of that. They're like, oh, well, we've done this house. Do you like the color scheme? You go, yeah, and then it's done. But you still got to manage the GC, because if they're not on point and it's taking them longer and they haven't ordered the material, and then all of a sudden they get caught up to where they need to lay down the floor, but now there's back order on the floor, all of that you need to know ahead of time. So you need to stay on top of them for sure. Yeah, the HVAC and the electrician, plumber, all of those things would cost you a lot of money. So make sure you bring them in and get some quotes if you're not sure about the numbers, okay? Now on the disposition, same thing. Everybody thinks, okay, I've done the reno, great. I'm gonna list it and sell. I pay a realtor fee, and then other than that, the money is mine. Well, not really. When it comes to your payday, you don't get to keep everything. Again, there's the lawyer's fee, there's the marketing if you want to advertise it and blow it up. If you have it listed by a realtor, you're going to pay the realtor fees, and maybe they want a marketing budget. So you want to factor that in. If you're going to stage it, so if you're flipping houses, I highly suggest you stage it. So that can run you $3,000 to $4,000. You got the photographer. I also do like a video. And so I do that, especially now with COVID, something you want to consider. So you got the photographer, the videographer. You have to have the place clean. And it's not like bringing somebody in for $100, because after renovation, you want to do a deep clean. So it costs you a few $100s. And by the way, when you do that, clean the windows. The worst thing is when you walk through a beautiful house and there's dust all over the windows. You want to make sure that those windows are clean, let the sun shine in, and then it'll feel awesome for the sellers, or the potential buyers. Depending on what kind of loan you got. Now, keep this in mind. When you're going to the bank, if you're getting a conventional loan from an A lender or even a B lender like a credit union, you want to make sure that you get a variable mortgage where you're only paying 3 months interest differential, because if you get a fixed mortgage, you're going to have a huge amount of penalty. And I've seen this done more often than I'd like to say, but it is on you to let your broker know, or whoever is the mortgage specialist that is underwriting your mortgage, that you intend to break this mortgage in about a year or less than a year. They have to know that, because if you get locked into a fixed mortgage, you're going to have a whole bunch of penalties. The same thing, regardless, there's going to be penalties to break before the end of the term, but at least with a variable mortgage, you're looking at a 3 months interest differential, which is, right now it's peanuts because the interest is so low. If you're not cognizant of that, it's going to cost you a lot. Your private lenders might have additional fees. You got to read the fine print, read those mortgage documents. I'm telling you guys, you need to know, because you don't want to find out once you're selling. So these are all the costs. As you can tell, it is not buying it. Here's the purchase price. Here's the renovation costs, by the way, without tax. And then, this is the ARV, and then this is your profit, right? It really is more to it than that. So just be aware. Now, how do you not miss something? Like, how do you do it so that you don't miss a cost and miscalculate? Well, the way to do it is to have a spreadsheet. Now, this is what I did in my flipping career, and I do it now on the multis, not with this sheet because it's a multi-unit, it's different. But this is what you do. So create a spreadsheet, have your property details here, and then each cost center broken down. And then if you want some additional calculations based on those numbers, you can throw those in there. If you're not tech savvy and you don't know how to use a spreadsheet, get somebody who can to help you out with this. You absolutely need this. Or at least have a template. If you want to go real simple, what you can do is just have like a Word doc, a template where you can print it off every time, and then just have all the numbers written down so you don't forget, okay? So this is just the first section of my deal analyzer, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, but the first section is just inputting on the property. So this is the property detail. And then this is where I play with the numbers right here. So I put the purchase price in there. I know what the ARV is based on the comps. And then, so I put what I anticipate to sell for, and then I have how long I'm going to hold it for. And then I just play with the purchase price. And then that gives me, you see at the bottom here, this tells me roughly how much my net profit will be. And then I can play with this sheet and then decide, you know, where am I comfortable? What's my MAO, my maximum allowable offer? And that's definitely based on how much I make in profit. So this is where you get the breakdown. So actually on this sheet here, I have the financing costs all up in here in the front section, because I also get to play with that. If I can negotiate a better rate or get a different rate, maybe I can't and I have to go higher. What does that look like? Does it make or break the deal? And so you really can play with with the sheet to find out, you know, how much tolerance you have and what direction you can go in. So all my financing costs is actually on the first page. And then the rest of it, and I typically don't even print this out, but oh, sorry guys. Typically what I do is anything in blue is what I write in, and then the rest, anything that's white, is just automatically calculated. So this is your acquisition cost. If there's anything in here that I need to adjust, usually it's all in here. And again, like the reason why, like the lawyer's fees, I handwrite that in because it depends if I'm paying for one lawyer or two. Closing costs, all of that stuff, I just guesstimate based on my previous sales and my experience. So I put all that in there. And then your renos, what I think the reno is going to be, again, based on the scope of work. So here it's not an input because this is something that I play with on the front page up here. So I'll put the reno cost in here. Well, if I scale back the reno to 40,000, what does it look like? Initially I wanted to put 60, but what if I don't do this or that? So you get to kind of play with it a little bit, right? This is the holding cost analysis. So everything I talked about, you find up in here. The sale cost, same thing. So this is your disposition fees, all in here. And then, you know, I have my analysis at the bottom, what my rate of return is on this project. So as you can tell too, this is also an input here, is the hold time. Really important because I always try to overshoot. My numbers are always going to be more conservative. So my flips, typically I could do them in less than 9 months, but I always went for 9 months because anything I did quicker than 9 months, if I saved 2 months of holding time and I did it in 7 months, then what happens is those 2 months of holding time and paying interest on the loans and all of that is now just profit put back into my pocket, right? So it's just additional profit, but you never know what could happen on a project. So really be conservative with your numbers, especially if you haven't done a flip before. So yeah, so this is it. This is what it looks like. I want to show you guys what this deal analyzer looks like. So this is a copy of the deal analyzer. This is a flat copy. I know there's going to be people that may want to have this live copy. Unfortunately, I cannot give it to you because it's so subjective on what you think the cost is and what I think the cost is and whether or not this should be included or shouldn't be included. You have to build your own, guys. I'm really sorry, but I can't, I just can't give it to you guys. But take a screenshot of this by all means. Build your own, make it work, but this is it. So yep, like I said, you just put in what the list price is, property address, all of the information on the property. And then this is where I make, like I said, I can play with the numbers a little bit here. So let's say I think I can sell it for whatever the ARV is. Well, what if I can't sell it for that price and I sell it for 20,000 less? What does it look like? This number over here keeps changing. So this will tell me what my profits are at all times based on the numbers that I have put in here. What if I get a first mortgage, but I finance myself the second mortgage? What does that look like? So all of that, and this gives me my gross net profit before taxes. That's the other thing that they don't show you on TV. You need to pay taxes on the money that you're making. So But because this is showing, this deal analyzer is showing with the cost of financing, this is my gross net before taxes. So I know where I'm at with this. But yeah, essentially just a bigger screenshot. Let me see if I can get, yeah. So I'm gonna show you guys this. I'm gonna count to 3, take a picture of it if you want. And then I'll scroll down. You guys can take another picture. I'm gonna count to 3, 3, 2, 1. And then page 2. Again, this is in a spreadsheet, guys. There's formulas, and like, it's a very complex sheet. There's formulas and everything kind of self-calculates. But it's super handy to have. And the nice thing about this is that I don't forget about adding something. So what I'm going to suggest to you, if the spreadsheet is too intimidating, don't worry about it. Just make a Word document and outline the 5 cost centers, and then define, you know, what could cost you in that section. So every time you underwrite a property and you consider buying it, so here's the purchase price, here's what all my costs are going to be, calculate that at the end, and then you know what your all-in cost is before you even put in an offer. Then you figure out what your ARV is, and then that spread is going to be what you have for your cost of renovation and your, sorry, not your cost of renovation, sorry, that'll be your spread for your profits, and make sure that there's enough room there. And the last thing I want to show you guys, actually, no, I got questions. That was the other thing. I got questions. So some of you guys came on the call when you guys registered. You were asked if you had any questions to ask prior to the webinar. So what I did is I just transferred them all. Joseline shared them with me. I just transferred them all into a Word doc. So let's go through this. And in the meantime, if you have any questions about the stuff that I shared, I want you guys to go in and type it in the message box. So this is your chance now. If you have any questions about the cost centers of flipping, you know, go in there, go in the chat box, let us know what you want to know about, because I'm here for you guys for the next 20 minutes just to answer questions. So the question that was in the when you guys registered is, what is the one question that you have about fixing and flipping properties or real estate investing that you want answered during the webinar? Now, this is just general in fix and flips, and I'm happy to go there. It doesn't have to be money related if there's anything that you guys want to know. But at the end of the day, before I actually move on into these questions, I want to explain something to you guys. The number one thing that I see that people do wrong when it comes to fixing and flipping is 2 things, really easy to do. Let's say you have a profit, you followed what Danielle said, you said, okay, great, I got all these costs and allocated and factored in, and great, I got a profit. It shows here $30,000 is what I should be making before taxes. Great, everything's looking beautiful. But then you get to the end of the project, and then all of a sudden, where's the profit gone to? Here are the biggest mistakes that newbie flippers do, and I'll tell you right now, it's super easy to do. One is they undervalue the cost of the renovations, and 2, they overvalue what the product will be worth at the end. And so be very, very careful with this. If you have a profit margin, so I'll give you an example. You got a profit margin of about $30,000, okay? It's a pretty good payday for a few months, you know, for a side hustle, right? If you undervalue the cost of the renovations by $20,000, easy to do. You thought it was going to cost you 60, you ended up going over, it cost you 80. It's actually not hard, okay? You undervalue the cost of renovations by $20,000, and then you overvalue what the ARV is, the after repair value, what you thought you could sell it for. You thought you could sell it for $500, and it sold for $480. So now you're down 20 on the sale price, and you're over 20 on the renovations. That's $40,000 right off of your bottom line. Your profit was supposed to be 30. Where does that leave you? You just worked for 6, 8, 10 months to pay somebody $10,000. because now you're in debt, $10,000. Okay, that's how easy it is. So you got to be on point with these numbers, guys. And if you're not sure, add more, be conservative. And if it doesn't make the deal work, don't worry about it. Never bend the numbers to make the deal work, because that's where you're going to get into trouble. Okay.
Danielle, can I just add one thing?
Yes, please.
Problem number 2 that you mentioned with people overestimating how much it's going to sell for. I see a lot of this problem with people who do not do proper due diligence. So they listen to somebody else as to what the comps say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you are determining your ARV, it's important that you double check those numbers. You look at those comparables, because before I got my license, I had a realtor do the numbers for me, and they were taking comparables from another neighborhood, right? And when I came in myself, I'm like, let me verify this. I'm finding that the comparables we're using it are from a different neighborhood that is superior to the one we were looking into. So always do your due diligence. It is your responsibility to do your due diligence. If you take what somebody else tells you and it doesn't work, it still is your responsibility.
100%. I'm so glad you said that. Let me go through that real quick. Okay, guys, if you're going to do some comps, this is what I used to do when I was flipping before I was licensed. I am a licensed realtor. It's not what I do, but I am a licensed realtor. So here's what I did. Okay, I used to tell the realtors what I needed. I need this in this neighborhood, and you need a comparable property. So it has to be in the neighborhood, has to be the same style or same type of property. So if it's detached, do detached. If it's a condo, do condos only. If it's a row townhouse, do row townhouse only. If it's a bungalow, then only look at bungalows. If it's a 2-story, only look at 2 stories. Has to be comparable, which means apple to apple. If it looks like an apple and an orange, they're not comparable. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is you want to be within the same plus or minus 10% square footage. Okay, so I used to do if it was 1,000 square feet, it was plus or minus 100 square feet, and if it was 2,000 square feet, I used to do plus or minus 150 square feet, because there's more properties in that size, so I was able to capture more comp. So I was okay going 150 square feet if it was 2,000 or 3,000, up to 3,000. So the other thing is, be very, very cautious. If you have a 2-bedroom, do not compare to a 3-bedroom. Going from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, huge price difference. So you cannot use a 3-bedroom as a comparable when you only have a 2-bedroom. So stick only to 2 bedrooms. But 3 to 4 makes no difference. It's very minimal. So just make sure you follow that. So beds and baths, same thing with the bath. Be cognizant, if you only have 1 bath, it is less desirable. So a 2-bed or a 1-bath, less desirable, does not compare to properties that have 3 bedrooms or 2 baths or more. Okay, got to be in the same neighborhood. And then know your market. So know if there's any boundaries, if it's over the tracks on the other side of a river or whatever. It may be distance wise not too far, but that boundary, if it's a 4-lane road, that could be a divider, and on the other side of that road is all rentals, and on the side that you're at is a nice neighborhood, or vice versa. So be cognizant about that. Did I miss anything, Joseline? You want to add anything?
No, we're good. Let's get through the questions, because we have some that are coming in as well. So some of them are very similar. There's one interesting one that maybe we should start with that while we turn the pages. I've gotten a lot of questions about what, obviously we just had a new election, and there was a lot of promises made to change the flipping industry. What are your thoughts on that? It's hard to say, but I still want to hear what your thoughts are.
So I don't speculate. I work with what's in front of me. Okay, before they do any legislative changes, it's going to take months and months. And if you're flipping, you should be doing it in less than 12 months. So I don't, as a flipper, I wouldn't worry about any promises made, because if you're old like I am, you do realize that they make promises, they may not deliver on them. But if they do deliver on them, it does take time. You're going to see it coming before it happens. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. there's a lot of talk. They're going to have to, I'll tell you what I'm worried about. They're going to have to recover the money that they put into COVID and recover that. So they're going to get creative. The government, the higher powers that are in the government are going to have to look at how can we get this money back, because they don't want to carry that debt. And as long as they carry that debt, it makes it harder for them to increase the interest rates, because now they're also increasing the interest rate on the debt that they've just incurred over COVID. Right now, the debt is low and they want to pay all of that back, or as much of it as they can, before they start increasing the interest rates. So I don't like to speculate. I just, whatever's in front of me. And the flipping industry is, there's quick turnovers. So I'm not too concerned about that. There's usually indication before it happens. And then at that point, maybe I'd scale back and not buy, or maybe I would only buy things that I know for sure that I could hang on to and rent. So that's, it's one way that I would negate a storm if something did happen, is to hold on to it for a while. But that's my take on it. My biggest concern with flipping, when I was flipping, is the rules around whether or not it constitutes a new build, and hasn't been an issue yet, but that's something that always made me uncomfortable, as far as whether it was considered a new build or whether or not it was, just because flipping gets taxed as operating income and not capital gains. So that was more my concern.
So let's get to the questions. We have a lot of them to go through.
Okay. And if there's anything that you wanted me to cover with the questions that came in, because I also, if I can, I would like to get the ones that came in as well. So I'll fly. Some of these aren't questions, guys. I didn't filter through them. I just put them in the Word doc, so we'll fly through this. So what property is good for flipping and how to raise money? That's two questions in one. So the first part of the question is, what property is good for flipping? Anything that leaves you a healthy enough profit margin. For me, guys, I'm a real estate investor. I read numbers, okay? So I look at the numbers. A couple of things I would tell you to be careful. If you're just starting, flip only properties in a nice neighborhood. Don't go on the other side of the tracks. It is harder to sell, and you really need to know what you're doing. The other thing is, don't over flip a house. So if you buy a property in a neighborhood that you're not familiar with, drive around that neighborhood, do open houses on the weekend, look at the finishings in that neighborhood and compare them to what you're doing on your, that's how you kind of gauge how you're going to do your scope on the reno, okay? So you really want to make sure that you're not putting granite where every other house in the neighborhood has, just a regular laminate countertop, okay? You don't want to be doing crown molding when nobody else in the neighborhood has it. You don't need to do that in order to sell, right? So that all comes off your bottom line. So, but when you first start out, look in nicer neighborhoods, stay away from, the really terrible ones. So cosmetic flips are the way to go to start. How to raise money? If you're just starting, you want to start with your friends and family, get some help. You may want to JV and share the profits instead of paying them interest on the amount that they lend, which is a great way to start and get yourself some experience under your belt. So then you can start raising money with people that don't know you, but they've seen that you've done it before. So then that'll give some confidence behind it. How do I pick a property is the second question, guys. It has to do with the numbers, okay? I don't flip further than 30, 40 minutes from where I'm located here in Milton, Ontario. I've got about 7 markets around my area that I can drive within 30 to 40 minutes. I don't go any further, because when you need to just drop what you're doing and drive, 40 minutes, like round trip, it's an hour and a half, just to walk in and check in on something because a contractor needed you, all of a sudden you realize how valuable your time is. So how do I pick a property? It has to do with the numbers and it has to do with the location. How do you make money out of it? You got to underwrite a property properly, excuse me. So make sure you build out a proper way to analyze that property and underwrite it and have a nice, healthy profit at the end, okay? So that's how you make money, guys. It's all in the numbers. And don't bend the numbers. Super important that you don't bend the numbers, because that's where people get hurt. They go, oh, well, if I just spend a little less, but if it's in your scope, it's in your scope for a reason. You needed that in order to capture that ARV. You got to understand, if you start doing less of a flip, that ARV, what you thought you could sell for, is also going to come down, right? And okay, so how to make money out of it too. Main thing, kitchens and baths, big ones. Paint, you get a great ROI on your paint. It costs very little to put paint. You could do it yourself, paint the house, freshens up the property, great ROI. So those are things that you definitely want to put money into in order to sell your property. How to go about planning and budgeting so as to not overspend. Stick to your scope. Stick to your scope. Don't do it just because you think you let. So another thing that people do is when they get excited. So in the beginning, you're going to be emotional. You walk through the property. Oh, it'll look so nice if I do this. Oh, it'll look so nice if I do that. And you overspend because these are things that you would do to your house if you lived in it. You're not living in it. You want to go with the basics. Don't overflip. This is the biggest thing. People do that. Oh, I'll get more if I get this. Well, you're speculating. It's an emotional thought because you might pay more for it if it had that. But would it be enough to pay for what you're doing and then some? So you know, anything that you do on the property takes more time. More time means more cost of holding, means longer your capital is tied up before you can sell and then buy and flip the next one. So you need to consider all of these. The more you do, the more time it takes, which is, you know, people really don't consider that too when they're flipping. After a quote to ensure that the workers will honor the calendar set. Okay, so that's a whole different webinar. I have what's called an ICA, which is an independent contractor agreement. And in it, I attach schedules. One is the payment schedule, which this is how the payment schedule works. For it to be successful, you need not only a timeline. So I take how much they're getting paid and I break it down over the time the project is supposed to take, but it should also have milestones. Just because it's September 29th doesn't mean you get paid. You have to have met the milestone that went with that. And so I have it in my contract that is discretionary to me. If you didn't meet the milestone at that date, then it's discretionary to me to pay you a portion based on what you've completed. So the independent contractor agreement with your payment schedule is how you make sure that you don't overpay your contractors, because if you overpay your contractors, it means you've paid them more than the work they've completed. Now there's no reason for them to come back and finish because they've already gotten paid for what they've done and then some. So if they get another contract that pays them more, they can just drop what they're doing with you and go somewhere else. And this happens all the time. Like I'm telling you guys, when I'm telling you this, all the time. So two things I do, like I said, the ICA with a payment schedule, and I also withhold 25%. So the payment schedule, I make it based on 75% of what they're going to end up getting paid. And then essentially the 25% I hold back is all their profit. So they have to finish my job to get their profit. What are your rights? By the way, if you have it under contract, then you just remind them it's under contract. So your rights are defined within the contract. With the market craziness right now, is it ideal to buy a house with these crazy prices and flip it, hoping to get a big profit in return or a bit of profit in return? Ultimately, guys, I don't do things hoping I'm going to get a return. I do things knowing I'm going to get a return. You have to know your numbers. Do your comps. You need to know your ARV. You need to know how much it's going to cost for your scope, and you need to know all of the different costs in between. And that's where people get lost. They don't factor all the rest in, which is why I wanted to share it with you guys. But yeah, you want to make sure that you can still do it in this. Listen, guys, like I just talked to my realtor in Hamilton, like these duplex conversions are selling for over 900,000, blowing my mind. Like, but they're still making money doing. I'm not doing it anymore, but they're still making money on duplex conversions right now. So if the numbers support it, then you're going to make money on it. So just make sure that you stick to your Mayo when you have that deal analyzer sheet. If you know your Mayo, your maximum allowable offer is 680,000. Don't get excited. Stick to 680,000, and maybe your resale value is 880, 900,000. You know, you don't want to keep going up and compromising, because if you eat up your profits, you've got no buffer now if something should go wrong. Okay.
Danielle, so what I'm hearing from you is that people should mute the speculation and stick to the facts, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I really like that. And also I think that applies to people who say, oh, the market is doing so well. Maybe, it will go up 30%. And then you Like, don't do that. Just stick to the numbers, mute everything else. Question, should you buy now? If you know exactly what you're looking for and you find a deal that meets all these criteria, everything you're looking for, it's checkbox, the numbers are there, yes, you can buy it. However, mute speculation. I like that. I have a question here. We have 2 minutes to go, so that's why I want you to get to
Yep.
this question.
Sure.
Somebody asked, why did you stop flipping?
Well, I'm just moving up. So I'm going to keep it short because you got a couple of questions. But really, honestly, there is, so I've been doing this the better part of a decade, and there is a journey that real estate investors go on. And so as you kind of, it's like going up the corporate ladder, and then you just kind of reach to where your niche is, and then you love it, and then you stay there. And I'm still walking my journey. So I started in the single family flips, and then I started doing duplex conversions. I'm still doing conversions and adding units, by the way, on the ones that I'm holding, but I realized I didn't want to sell anymore. I wanted to build a portfolio. And so, you know, I started seeing the revenue that I was getting on my duplex conversions, and I'm like, hey, I just want to do more of those. So I ended up just finding a way to get out of flipping and doing that. Now, having said that, I'm still flipping, but now I'm doing it on bigger properties, and I'm flipping to myself. I know, Joseline, you wanted me to mention that. So what I'm doing is I'm burring. I'm buying the properties, I'm putting some work into it, raising the market rents up, essentially raising the value of that property up, and then refinancing, pulling my capital out and doing it again. So I've got a 5-unit that I'm working on right now. I've got an 8-unit that I just closed on August 5th that I met with my realtor yesterday to come up with a plan to attack that. I'm doing a duplex into a triplex conversion right now. The permit's in at the city. So I'm very busy like doing that, but I'm holding all of those. When those projects are done, I'm getting conventional financing, getting my capital out, and just holding it. So I'm just kind of looking at the longer game plan. And my next step will be development. I actually just want to go into the development space now. So you'll find entrepreneurs kind of get bored and they want to know what's the next thing. What else can I do? And that's just the natural progression of a real estate investor. So anybody that you see that's been doing, maybe they're in the multi-unit space or maybe they're doing development, chances are they started here and they've just worked their way up to there.
Thank you very much, Danielle. So we're at 8 o'clock right now. Maybe what we'll do is for all the questions that were asked but didn't get answered, I will call them and answer those questions one-on-one. If I find that the questions that, you know, I will just forward them to you and you can either connect with them or answer them via email. So either way, those questions are going to get answered. Thank you very much, Danielle. I really appreciate it. I feel like every time we speak, I definitely learn something new. So it's definitely profitable that you were here tonight. Thank you, everyone who was here on the webinar. I hope that your questions were answered. And more importantly, I hope that you learned something that will help you on your next flip or that will help you achieve your goals in real estate investing either this year or next year. But thank you very much for being here, and we'll connect with you soon. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.